I'll be honest with you, I made this recipe purely for selfish reasons. I just wanted a cinnamon swirl bread. That's really why this episode exists. Welcome everybody to this week's first ever episode of Milo's Test Kitchen. My name is Nathan. I'm really glad you guys all showed up. This week we'll be making a cinnamon swirl Hokkaido roll with figs. This recipe is an adaptation of Mr. Joshua Weissman. Thank you, Joshy boy, for this awesome recipe. This recipe was made out of purely selfish reasons. I just really wanted a cinnamon swirl bread to eat for breakfast. So let's just get right into it. You're going to want to start off with 320 grams or 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 9 grams or 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, 3 grams or 3/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt, 56 grams or 1/4 cup of honey, 52 grams or 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 2 whole eggs, one of them at room temperature, 120 grams or half a cup of whole milk, as well as some extra milk on hand, brown sugar, cinnamon. For the Tangzhong, 20 grams or 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 26 grams or 2 tablespoons of water, and 60 grams or 4 tablespoons of whole milk. I used about 6 or 7 dried figs. You can use whatever dried fruit you have on hand. I did this recipe entirely on the metric system because it is the only way to do a recipe. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take those figs and chop them up. If you don't have figs, you can use raisins or plums or apricots or prunes, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing. I don't know, whatever you're into. Anyway, you're going to chop them up into about bite-sized pieces, something that you're comfortable putting in your dough. That's really what this application is for. So we're going to just chop those up. And I ended up soaking them in water for about 15 minutes. In retrospect, you probably could have skipped that step. If so, I guess just chop them up and set them aside. Don't add that extra step of soaking them in hot water because it really doesn't make a difference in the end. The next thing we're going to want to start on is making our Tangzhong, and this really separates it from a normal brioche. This is what really makes it Hokkaido milk bread. So first you're going to want to add your 20 grams of all-purpose flour, your 27 grams of water, and your 60 grams of whole milk. And please try to get it into your saucepan if possible. Turn your saucepan on to medium heat and stir constantly. Don't stop because this process happens very quickly. I think mine only took about a minute and a half. Even though this footage is sped up, it happened very, very quickly. You don't want to burn your Tangzhong. You'll start to notice that it changes viscosity. You'll start to see it leave streaks on the bottom of your pan, and before you know it, boom, you have a paste. So don't step away from this. Once it's finished, set it aside, let it cool down. That way you can use it in a later application. Now I wanted to use active dry yeast. Unfortunately, this yeast happened to be dead. Still, the process would have been the same of adding 9 grams of your yeast. I added it to this warmed milk that was in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds before I added the yeast. Fortunately, it was dead, so it was a null point. As you can see here, I ended up using instant yeast anyway. So salt, flour, honey, and there it is, that instant yeast. I ended up warming up the milk anyway so that I could add it to the honey. That way it would have been easier to add into this floury mixture. Now this next portion really is an exercise of troubleshooting my own mistakes in this case. My first mistake being I only added half of my wet ingredients, that being the honey milk mixture. Try my hardest to get this dough to come together, but since I'm missing the other half of my ingredients, it's just not going to happen. I'm going to try to knead and it won't come together. Then I remember to add my Tangzhong. I think, oh great, everything's okay now. This is going to come together, and in fact it actually did come together pretty nicely. I think really the most unfortunate part about this next portion is that I'm feeling really good about this dough. It feels right. Everything about it I enjoy. It's really fun to knead, and I'm kneading. Then, only then, while I'm halfway through the process, do I realize, oh my gosh, I forgot the egg. So then I try to incorporate it by hand. Doesn't work. It's extremely sticky. It's not happening. And I have to bust out the one utensil that I didn't want to have to use. That's right, the stand mixer. I wanted to avoid using it. I wanted to do the whole thing by hand, but alas, I had to bust out the stand mixer. Now, if you're new to bread making, a good general rule of thumb to follow is to knead 5 minutes if you're doing it by hand, and knead 10 minutes if you're doing it using like a stand mixer. Since we're making basically a Japanese brioche, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of butter at a time, all the while having it incorporated. In this case, I had to scrape down the sides because the butter was just not incorporating properly. It was getting stuck to the sides. But after that, went back, let it incorporate, and let it go for about 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes is usually a good rule of thumb. Because this recipe substitutes honey for sugar, just be aware that it is very high hydration dough. It's very sticky. Don't necessarily be afraid of it, but just be aware that it is a very sticky dough. At this point, if you choose not to add your dried fruit, you can cover it with saran wrap or cling film, whatever you have on hand, and let it bulk ferment for about an hour at room temperature or overnight in the fridge if you have the patience for it. But in this case, since we are adding fruit, don't forget to incorporate it as well. This next portion is the cinnamon sugar of our cinnamon swirl. So really, I just eyeballed it, and you can do the same. All I'm doing here is mixing it, trying to break up those big old clumps of sugar, and setting it aside for the next portion. Now this dough is actually over fermented. As you can tell, it's actually slightly sunken on the sides, but that's okay. You're still going to want to slap that bad boy down for our next portion. We're going to actually try to remove this as cleanly as we can from the bowl. As I reminded you, this is a very, very sticky dough. Because of that, we're probably going to have to flour every surface, that being your workstation and the dough. That way it becomes easier to work with. At this point, what we're trying to do is we're really trying to roll it out into about a rectangle. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try to get it as close as possible. That way we can start sprinkling on the brown sugar mixture. This is what's going to really take it to the next level. Trust me, it's amazing. Now for this next portion, I would have loved to have a better camera angle, but unfortunately I was blocking the shot. All I'm doing is I'm trying to roll it up as evenly as possible. That way you can get that really nice swirl effect. I'm going to flip it over and tuck in the edges. That way none of the goodies fall out, you know? Now this next step is really important. You want to lube up your bread pan with the fat of your choice. I'm using butter, not because this needs any more butter, because God knows it doesn't need any more butter, but just so that it has a non-stick surface. After you let your bread proof for about another hour, you're going to want to mix 1 egg and a splash of milk to make a little egg wash. That way you can brush it onto your beautiful loaf. That way you can get that really pretty golden brown color. Otherwise it'll just be this blonde, sad blob of carbs. Now that your bread has been thoroughly egg washed, you're going to want to pop it into a 350-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Unfortunately, as you can see, there's pizza stones in the way. Since I didn't preheat those pizza stones, this is actually going to backfire me later on, you'll see. So we're going to set that to 350, 25, 30 minutes. I ended up having to do more time because of those pizza stones. Now as you can tell, the egg wash left a beautiful golden brown crust on the surface of our bread loaf, exactly what we wanted. Unfortunately, the middle was not thoroughly cooked yet, because of those pizza stones. That meant we had to pop it back in the oven for about another 10 minutes to finish the cooking process. Now, a trick I used to keep the top from completely getting incinerated in the oven was tenting it with tin foil or aluminum foil, because we don't use tin in this country. Whatever. Regardless, it keeps the top from burning, but allows for the middle to continue finishing the cooking process. Now, if you properly lubed up that's a nasty word. If you've made your ceramic non-stick, hopefully your bread loaf will come out pretty easily. It should come out something like that, yeah. If you are patient, you are going to wait for this bread to cool down completely before cutting into it. If you are impatient, wait at least 1 hour. Remember, this bread is still cooking in the middle. You don't want to ruin the texture by cutting it in prematurely. After patiently waiting for your bread to cool down, you can finally reap the rewards of your hard work. Oh my God. I can assure you, hands down, that this is the most delicate and decadent bread I have ever made. It is unbelievably soft, and it is unbelievably delicious. It truly is a special treat. Please give this bread a try. I highly recommend it.